That sound means that we are live. Welcome everyone to Progressive Parenting Network Presents. And today I'm going to be talking to a lovely panel of women about hospitals are now banning photography during births. Hello. Not cool. We're going to be talking more about that right now. I'm going to start with Jennifer Rue McClellan. There we go. Let's see if I can get her live up and on here. Here we go. Who wrote the article, and I want you to tell, before you get into the article, tell everybody what you do and where they can find you online, and then a little bit more about what was going on.
Sure. Thank you for having me, Gina. My name is Jen McClellan, and I'm with PlusSizeBirth.com. I'm a childbirth educator who specifically advocates for plus-size women. I had a friend, a photographer friend, Jennifer Mason Photography, that wanted to write about birth photography and encourage people to do birth photography. And I was like, this is great. Let's do an article together about it. And I posted it, and I was excited and gave some tips around hiring a birth photographer. And all of a sudden, there was this thread on my Facebook page of all these people saying that they were told that they were not allowed to take photos during labor and birth. And I was like, what? I had heard a lot about video for a few years now, but now not allowing photos, I was outraged. So I immediately started doing a little bit of research and then wrote the blog post, Stop Censoring Birth. Hospitals are banning birth photos. And I started a change.org petition, and that within 24 hours got over 200 signatures, and it's still growing. And so that's where this all came about, was me just hearing what women were saying and just becoming really upset about it and saying, this is ridiculous. Like, why should we be banned from capturing the births of our children? We're censoring birth, and birth is not a freshly newborn baby wrapped in a hospital blanket. Come on now. So that's where this has all come from.
Now, I mean, people are taking pictures right now. I mean, there's photographers everywhere. In fact, we have two amazing photographers, two of my favorites. I know my sister's not on right now. She's going to kill me. But two of my favorites are on here. Oh, we have Leilani Rogers, who's joining us. And she's been a photographer like over 8 years now, I believe. Is that right?
Well, I've been a photographer for a while, but I've only been doing birth photography for 4 years.
Okay, so 8 years, a long time, but in general 4 years. And have you run into any issues in the hospital when you are doing birth photography?
Sometimes I'll have a testy nurse turn to me and say, you can't photograph anything until the baby is actually delivered. But that's pretty rare, and it kind of depends on the personality of that nurse. Now, with C-sections, I have not had very much luck at all. In fact, I've only been allowed in once, and it was because the OB told everyone that I was with him. That was the only way for him to get me back there.
Wow. So this is an issue that comes up. Now, we're also joined by Maura Hastings of Apple Blossom Families in Vancouver. And is this an issue that comes up in Canada? Is this something that you have to deal with as well?
I live in a pretty major city, and the large hospital that we have here is very family-centered. So I've been allowed into the OR most of the times. The other day I photographed a breech extraction. I think the hospital knows who I am, like a lot of the staff, so they know that I'm not going to use the photos against them, and they know how much it means to the clients, because even all the nurses enjoy following my page and looking at all the photos that I have to share. I think some of them go after the babies are born and go check out to see what's happening. As a photographer, I just always make sure that I check with all the staff that comes in, just casually on the side, like, are you okay with photos? Are you okay? And if anyone says no, I just make sure they're not in the photos. I think I'm quite sad for all the hospitals that don't allow people to have their births photographed. I think if I was a birthing woman and I came to a hospital and they said no photography under any circumstances, I wouldn't want to birth my baby there. It's kind of saying that they don't trust the staff, really. And if you can't be trusted to have what you're doing documented, then I'm not sure that I'd want to ever have my baby there.
I feel the same way about there's a local dentist that I tried to take my kids to, and they were like, you can bring your kids in, but you can't go into the office with them while we're doing our dentistry. And I was like, well, I don't want to bring my kids then if you don't want to witness. I don't know that I want to have anything done where the people who are doing it don't want to have any witnesses.
And if it's a fear of insurance claims, I would think that with insurance, if something happened to the baby, let's say, during the birth, then they would be happy to have proof, so then that family could get money to help their family with any kind of problems that happened during the birth. So really, I don't think the whole insurance part of it really plays a role in decision making, whether people should be able to choose to have their birth photographed or not. That's my
opinion. They would have a video camera in every room then, because isn't that what the fetal monitor is for? It's that
yes.
that long piece of paper that comes out and says this is exactly what happened during the birth, which seems kind of dated in 2015 when we have cameras. So
honestly,
back to you. I'm sorry, Leilani, go ahead.
Honestly, I can't. I was chatting about this with some colleagues, and I can't think of a time when I've heard of a birth photographer being subpoenaed for, for proof of malpractice or. So I think that fear is largely unnecessary. And like you said, Gina, that doesn't instill a lot of faith in your patients if you're that concerned about them photographer catching something.
Yeah. So we're also joined today by Kristins Question, and Kristin is the only non-photographer in here today, besides me. And so we have an attorney joining us today. And my question to you, Kristin, is maybe not even as an attorney. How about just like as a mom who had a child?
I'm not an attorney. I'm not a lawyer. No, I work with lawyers and have worked with lawyers for a really long time, and study women's legal rights in childbirth, and write about it and talk about it a lot, because it's one of the most fascinating pieces in maternity care for me. And this whole dust up about photos and videos in the delivery room, to me, just like it falls under like the same heading of all of these hospital preferences that women and families are, expected to sort of, submit to, because the hospital has some sort of preference about how they give birth and what their family is doing, and the environment in which they do so. Even when the hospital's reasoning is not very rational necessarily, and that's true for a lot of birth practices where science and evidence and common sense would say otherwise, but hospitals still insist on their protocols or their sort of outdated routines in a lot of things. So and everybody always points to the whole liability question as this all-encompassing like the umbrella under which we all have to say, oh, okay, you're right. If there's liability involved, then I guess that's a reason to stop asserting that I have preferences about my own birth or whatever. And I think that's a little bit of a cop-out. Using liability concerns as a reason to either coerce women or enforce policies on them that don't make any sense is not any good.
Yeah, how you said that. Oh, I'm picturing myself, giving birth and being, oh, I'm sorry, you have liability issues. Okay, well, screw what I want.
Well, I mean, like, look at, like having women lie on their backs, for example. That's a preference issue. That's not a safety issue. And if anything, you might argue that it's actually harmful to women and babies. And this is sort of, to me, this just all kind of like goes in the same basket of, it's a hospital preference versus a family preference. And in my book, the family preferences always come first. I mean, we're not talking about a safety hazard with having, a photographer or a videographer in there. And to be honest, to me, it's like, it's a little condescending. It's a little bit like, assuming that people aren't going to be respectful or use their good judgment, or for example, about nurses being photographed. I mean, any professional photographer is going to ask, and is going to be respectful. And by God, if they found out that they, included someone in a photo who didn't want to be, they would delete that. They wouldn't go around showing that to people. So there's just sort of like this assumption that, that everybody's not sort of competent adults capable of making good decisions and communicating with each other and acting within ethical and respectful boundaries. So that's kind of an ongoing imbalance in maternity care.
Yeah, it's even partners being told that they can't take a picture of their baby being born. I mean, this is ridiculous. This is a service that we're paying a lot of money for, and it'd be like a wedding where the venue states that you're not allowed to have photography. I mean, this is ridiculous, and I really encouraged parents and had tips within that article, not only for hiring a birth photographer, for just allowing themselves to have photos taken by their loved ones, of asking beforehand, what are the hospital's policies? And there are many different tips there. And if it's a nurse that's saying put the camera away, then ask for a charge nurse. And there are things that we can be doing, but this is a consumer issue, and we need to, as consumers, be speaking out about this. And as we're doing right now, but more people need to. If someone finds out that their hospital has a policy against photography, then they need to be making a big deal out of it and asking why. What is the hospital afraid of? What are they trying to hide? We need transparency.
The only way that it's going to happen, I mean, there was years and years and years where the father wasn't allowed into the room, and the only way that got changed, it wasn't by a bunch of doctors, it was because the consumers were saying, I want my husband in the room with me. And
wasn't that was the same argument? Like, what are you guys so afraid of us witnessing?
Exactly. That's the exact same thing. So what Jennifer was just saying right now is she's talking about the article that she wrote at plussizebirth.com, and you can find it at Stop Censoring Birth. Hospitals are banning birth photos, and what she was talking about was some of the tips or guides that are in the article. So I really encourage you to go read that article at plussizebirth.com, and let's go over at least two of those tips for moms. And by the way, there's some really beautiful photography in here. It's really gorgeous as I'm going through them. I am such a crybaby. I'm ready to cry looking at these. So yeah, you asking for specifics on what you are and are unable to photograph them about it. Jennifer, when you talk to moms, I mean, I know that you go around the country speaking to moms. I know you're going to be at a lot of at least a couple of Birth Without Fear conferences coming up, and talking about photography and being photographed yourself. But as far as the hospital room goes, what are moms hoping to get pictures of? Let's talk about that. Like, I've seen in the arguments on Facebook, people are like, well, what's the big deal? Like, it seems really selfish. Like, it just, the arguments have really kind of rubbed me the wrong way, and I'm not the person to answer that because I'll just cuss too much. So I'll just ask this to you really quickly. Like, why is it important to have your picture taken? Let's go there.
Well, I mean, I think even the birth photographers on this panel could answer that as well, because they meet with parents who say, but we're, as a society, we've so changed the narrative of birth, right? And birth isn't, as I said in the beginning, just this fresh new baby. It's a woman laboring and giving birth and watching someone transform into a mother, or watching a family grow. I mean, some of the most beautiful photographs of birth come from a photo of a partner looking upon their loved one in this most amazing moment of their lives, and to not allow that to be photographed is robbing captured memories from people's lives. So yeah, I mean, a lot of people want labor photographed and want that moment where the baby comes up and their lives, where they become a family, that is being lost by people being told they are not allowed to have photos taken. And yeah, I even heard from someone who said that they had to put their cameras and phones into a locker a locker until the baby was not only out, but cleaned. And then I had other people say that, yeah, they weren't allowed to take photos until the baby was cleaned up. Not okay.
It's a control issue, and birth photography is about so much more than that crowning shot. Like Jen said, it's about so many connections between partners, and then of course when the baby comes out, between parents and their child. It's all about the patient. It's all about them, and yeah, it's definitely, this is a rule that is definitely streamlining things and making it convenient for the hospital staff.
And not to mention, I just have to say, even if it is about the crowning moment, I don't see the problem with that. I don't think that doctors should be shaming women on wanting to see a baby coming out of their vagina. It's the most life-altering, craziest moment in time. And when it happens as a woman, sometimes it's nice to go back and be able to say, oh, wow, look, that's what it looked like when my baby was being born. I think I've been to over 150 births, and I would say that almost every single one of my clients gets the coming out shots, and those shots to them are important. And it's not about how the doctor's handling the baby on its way out. It's about watching their baby as it emerges from within. It's totally amazing, not to mention all the beautiful moments afterwards, but even those moments, I think one of my biggest pet peeves is when a care provider says, well, I don't know why you'd be taking those pictures. It's like, well, they hired me for money to take those pictures.
Well, it's none of your business.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, I think, why do we photograph anything? Like, it's not even a question to me, like, why would you photograph birth? Why do you photograph anything? To say that you're not allowed to take pictures for this, this little period of time is like if you were getting married and, the church said you're not allowed to take any pictures of, your first kiss as husband and wife. You can start taking photos when you guys are on the front steps as soon as the doors close behind you. People will be throwing rice and it'll be great and you'll be holding hands, and we think that's a better time for you to start taking pictures. I mean, that's just absurd. And then as far as, from my own experience, my doula took pictures on a cell phone because I had said, I don't think I want pictures. I think that sounds really strange. I don't think I want that. And then decided, you know what, go ahead and take them, and then we'll just delete them if I'm totally grossed out by it. And it is, I can't tell you how grateful I am that she took those photos. I didn't realize that, well, having never given birth before, I didn't realize that, I was like in shock after, as soon as my baby was born. I was just like, whoa, what just happened? That was just so fast. Everything was so fast. That it was hard for me to process what was going on. And looking, there was no emergency. I mean, it was a normal, fine, uncomplicated birth, but it felt very fast to me as someone going through the process. And having the pictures to look back on was like so priceless because, you're inside your head while you're giving birth. You don't see what it looks like from the outside. And to see like, and it brings back memories too. So like, to see a picture of like my crowning baby, like then I remember like touching his head when he was being born. That's a really big deal. That's a huge deal. You can't get those moments back, and to have to have it on a photo is huge. Same with like like Jen said, the first moment when you get your baby on your chest. That is possibly the most significant moment in your entire life. To say that someone's not allowed to take a photo of that, it's beyond the realm of reason to me.
It is beyond the realm of reason. It's ridiculous, is the very idea. And I love that you said that, the imagery of like the church saying, hey, congratulations, we're really glad that you're going to have your wedding with us. And as far as photography goes, anything after the time when you guys leave the church is fine with us. Like, that's crazy town. You're just like, well, screw that. I'm not going to get married here. And that's what I've been seeing a lot of, where people are like, well, if a hospital told me that, then I'll just have my baby at home. Like, they're going to be doing a lot more damage, I think, by saying this kind of stuff than they think.
And when you hire a professional photographer, you've got someone who is skilled at staying out of the way. You have someone who's skilled at knowing when to step back, someone that is able to get those moments without being intrusive, someone who knows when it's appropriate or inappropriate to be photographing. It's also a respect thing for our profession. You know, it is condescending. I can't remember who used that word, but it is condescending to us as professionals to think that we don't know how to handle ourselves in a hospital.
Can I just say something about privacy issues?
Yeah, I was just going to bring up HIPAA.
Yeah, some people were bringing up HIPAA, which is a real misunderstanding about what HIPAA is and is meant for. HIPAA is about patient privacy. It's not meant to shield, you know, doctors and nurses from being photographed. It's about patient privacy. And if a patient is saying, I want this done, or I'm releasing my privacy on this specific thing, then that is like that right or that privilege exists for the patient to use, not for someone else to either sort of enforce on behalf of the patient when the patient doesn't want it enforced. You know what I'm saying? Like in spite of the patient saying, I want a photographer there. So that's really not it's just not a valid concern at all.
So that argument is invalid, is what you're saying.
Yes.
The argument is invalid.
Can I just say that I attend a lot of home births, and I've never once come across a midwife that asked me to not take photos of the birth, which I have come across it at the hospital, but I've never once come across it with a midwife at a birth, and I think it's because they know that the baby is coming out, and this is the most important thing for the clients to have, is to have pictures of their birth. And I think the hospitals need to get with the times if they're banning photographers from coming in, or even just people from using their own cameras, because they're going to lose out in the end.
And it's about respect for their client too. They respect their client enough to give them that basic right. It's not even a privilege. It's their right to photograph that moment of their lives.
And normal birth is normal. It's not a medical emergency like they're claiming it is. Like, every birth should not end in a medical emergency. The majority of births are not high risk, and they are just a baby coming out of a woman, and they're not like there shouldn't even be that much medical things that go on during the birth that would require us not to take photos.
I think if there's not a safety risk posed by a woman's preference, there should not even be a question about it.
Yeah, this comes down to women demanding respect, and sadly that we have to. I mean, that's a whole other topic, the very idea that we have to, but demanding the things that we want and saying, this is what I want. Are you the provider that's going to provide that for me? And when enough of us are saying those things, then they're going to be saying, yes, of course, because they're starting to get, they want a pretty environment, so we're going to put like a potted plant over here, and like they're slowly starting to catch on to the things that we want, and unless we vocalize what they are, then we're not going to get it.
Can I just add one little tiny disclaimer to that? Okay. That's okay. I totally forgot what I was going to say. One thing.
This is a late phone call. Sorry.
One thing I would just advise people on, though, is to beware of marketing tactics versus what hospitals are actually willing to deliver. So, like when Gina says, "Here's what I want. Are you going to be able to provide this?" Just because someone says they're willing to provide it doesn't mean they necessarily will. And just because a facility is advertising that it is friendly to certain practices doesn't necessarily mean they are. And so I would really encourage people to do more research and talk to mothers who have given birth there, or even better, birth professionals who work there a lot and see a lot of births. So that's a little tidbit there.
Excellent. So I encourage everyone to please go to plussizebirth.com, read the article, Hospitals Are Banning Birth Photos, go through the tips that they mentioned, and stick to it. Stick to your guns. Stick to what you want. We would have to ask for permission to do anything. I think we apologize too much and we ask too much. We really just need to say, this is what we're going to do. This is the birth of your baby. I mean, how many times are you going to do it? Of course, I've done it 4 times, but I've only had it photographed twice. And I really wish that all of them had been photographed. I loved what Leilani said. Hire a professional. If there's anything that anybody's going to say, I read in not article. I read in a Facebook thread the other day. I posted your article, Jennifer, in a big group that I'm in with like over 7,000 women, and one of the people was a practitioner at a hospital. Said, "Well, if there's a dystocia, then I don't want to have to fight or move someone out of my way who's taking pictures to get to it." And it just it was very defensive, and it really didn't have anything to do with the mother, and they were trying to make it a safety issue. But if you have a professional photographer, like you said, Leilani, you've been doing it for 4 years, like you know where you're supposed to be. You're not going to be like blocking. And it's just ridiculous. If you hire a professional, have somebody get those pictures that you want, because they know where to be, they know what they're doing. And like at default, if you do have your Julia take pictures, like you said, Kristen, you're going to cherish those pictures no matter what you think. Even if you think, oh, I look awful, you're going to look at those pictures 2 years later, and all you're going to see is the power of the moment. You're not going to see like the random hair in your face or that you know, any of those things. You're not going to care about those things. And that's the other thing too about the doctor catching the baby. I'm sorry, doctors, but nobody's looking at you in those birth pictures. Nobody's looking at the doctor. No one's looking at the nurses. They're looking at that face of the mother who's just like, oh, you know, that look, the look, right, that they all make, or the look they give the father when the dad's crying. Oh my God, that always kills me. Like I'm crying right now thinking about all these images. Thank you, ladies, for joining us today. I think that this is going to help a lot of moms. I really do think it's going to help them understand that the HIPAA argument is kind of silly, very silly, and that we deserve respect and we deserve these images. We deserve to be able to have them captured by whomever we want, whether it's an amazing photographer or our best friend or my grandma or whoever, that's our prerogative and that we have the right to do that. Any last words before we say goodbye?
There's a change.org petition part of the article, because I feel like, you know, those change.org petitions, if they go pretty big, then people pay attention, and that way if someone's getting pushback, they can be like, well, here's all these consumers saying we want this. So I encourage you, when you go to the article at the very bottom, it says act now. So please sign it and share it, and let's let our voices be heard.
Yeah, absolutely. I shared that on my Facebook page. I will be sure to do it again after today. And speaking of Facebook pages, can everybody, I'm just going to go around once and let everybody know where they can find you. So we'll start with Morag. How can we see more of your beautiful images?
AppleBlossomFamilies.com. You can search Apple Blossom on Facebook or facebook.com/Vancouver doula.
Excellent. And Leilani, how can we find you?
My work is online at photosbylei.com, and I'm also on Facebook at Leilani Rogers Photographer, or Facebook.com/Leilani Rogers Photographer. Periods in between Leilani and Rogers and Photographer.
I'll make sure we get that fixed up.
Plussizebirth.com, and then my Facebook page is under my blog's name of Plus Size Mommy Memoirs.
All right, and Kristen, where can we find all of your amazing works?
My website is birthmonopoly.com, and the Facebook page is Facebook.com/birthmonopoly. I also write and am on the board at Improving Birth. So I have a ton of stuff on improvingbirth.org, and a Facebook page of the same name.
Excellent. All right, ladies, I want to thank you for joining us today and for all the work that you do. And we will see you all next time.
Back at you, Gina.
Thank you, Gina.
Thank you. And
Thank
goodbye,
you.
everybody. Until next time, take care of yourselves and take care of each other.
Bye.